In the bustling city of New York, where dreams and despair coexist in a delicate balance, there lived a girl named Ruby Kapoor. She wasn't born in the city, she had arrived 3 years earlier, at 22, suitcase in one hand and camera bag slung over her shoulder, stepping off a Greyhound bus at Port Authority with the kind of wide-eyed optimism that only someone from a small town in Pennsylvania could carry. Ruby had grown up in a quiet suburb where the biggest event was the annual county fair. Her father was a high school history teacher who loved old photographs more than he loved teaching. Her mother ran a small bakery that smelled eternally of cinnamon and vanilla. They had supported her passion for photography, buying her first real camera, a battered Nikon FM2, when she turned 16, but they worried. New York was too big, too loud, too unforgiving. "Come home if it gets hard," her mother had said at the bus station, pressing a tin of homemade cookies into her hands. It got hard quickly. Ruby's early months were a blur of temp jobs, waitressing at a diner in Midtown, data entry for a marketing firm that paid just enough to cover a shared apartment in Astoria. She spent evenings wandering Manhattan with her camera, capturing the city's pulse. Steam rising from manholes at dawn, street vendors haggling in multiple languages, the golden hour light slicing between skyscrapers. But the dream was to become a renowned photographer, to have her work in galleries, magazines, exhibitions. The competitive world of photography was relentless. Submissions to contests vanished into black holes, agents never replied, gallery owners smiled politely and said, "We love the energy, but we're booked for the next 2 years." She developed a signature look, bold red lipstick, the exact shade of a vintage fire engine, applied every morning like armor. It wasn't just makeup, it was defiance. A reminder that she was still here, still fighting. Friends teased her about it, ruby red, ready for battle, but she wore it like a talisman. One crisp October afternoon, after another rejection email, "Your portfolio shows promise, but lacks a cohesive narrative," Ruby wandered deeper into Soho than usual. The neighborhood's cast-iron buildings and cobblestone streets felt like a respite from the glass towers uptown. She turned down a narrow side street lined with galleries and boutiques, and there it was, an old, quaint bookstore with a faded green awning and a sign that read, "Whispers of the Past." The window displayed dusty first editions and a handwritten note, "Rare finds. No rush. Come in and breathe." Intrigued, she pushed open the heavy wooden door. A small bell chimed softly. The air inside smelled of aged paper, leather, and faint vanilla. Shelves stretched to the ceiling in a labyrinthine maze, sunlight filtered through high windows in dusty beams. An elderly man behind the counter, wire-rimmed glasses, cardigan, nodded without looking up from his ledger. Ruby wandered the aisles, fingers trailing spines. History, poetry, forgotten memoirs. Then, on a lower shelf half hidden behind a stack of art books, she saw it. An old, leather-bound journal with intricate gold lettering that had mostly worn away. No title, just the faint outline of what might have been a name. She pulled it out carefully. The pages were yellowed but intact. Handwritten in elegant, looping script, Diary of Ilyana Moreau, 1925 to 1929. Ruby's breath caught. She opened to a random page. October 12, 1927. Tonight at Small's Paradise, the crowd was electric. Duke himself sat in, trumpet blazing like fire. I sang, "Summertime," and felt the room hold its breath. But afterward, in the alley behind the club, Tommy waited with that look again. "One more job," he said. "Then we're free." I want to believe him. God, how I want to believe. Ruby sat on the floor amid the shelves, reading. Ilyana had been a jazz singer in Harlem during the height of the Renaissance. Born to a Creole family in New Orleans, she moved north chasing music and freedom. She performed in speakeasies, hidden basements where liquor flowed despite prohibition, where white patrons mingled with black artists in a rare cross-cultural haze. Names leaped off the pages: the Savoy Ballroom, where the Lindy Hop was born, the Cotton Club, glamorous but segregated. Small's paradise, truly integrated and alive with energy. Ilyana's entries mixed glamour and grit, glittering evenings under dim lights, the thrill of improvisation, but also heartbreak, lost loves, betrayals, the constant shadow of racism and mob influence. One entry described a raid, police bursting in, bottles smashed, patrons scattering. Ilyana escaped through a back door, heart pounding, heels clicking on wet pavement. Ruby felt a strange connection. Ilyana's resilience mirrored her own quiet battles. Both women chasing art in a city that devoured dreamers. Both marked by bold choices, Ilyana with her daring performances, Ruby with her lipstick. She bought the journal for $20. The owner raised an eyebrow but said nothing. That night, in her tiny apartment, Ruby read until dawn. By morning, an idea had taken root. Ruby couldn't stop thinking about Ilyana. The diary wasn't just history, it was inspiration. She decided to create a photographic series, Echoes of Harlem, recreating Ilyana's world through modern images. Not literal reenactments, but interpretations, moody portraits in vintage-inspired settings, capturing the spirit of the jazz age. She started small. Thrift stores in the East Village yielded flapper dresses, feathered headbands, beaded necklaces. She practiced makeup. Smoky eyes, finger waves in her dark hair. Her red lipstick stayed, it felt like a bridge across decades. Her first shoot was in an abandoned warehouse in Brooklyn she'd scouted online. Friends modeled, Jamal as a dapper trumpet player, Sophia as a flapper with a defiant gaze. Ruby used natural light filtering through cracked windows, long exposures to blur motion like jazz notes hanging in air. The results were haunting, faces half in shadow, eyes carrying stories. But challenges mounted. Funding was non-existent, she used savings for film and processing. Rejections continued. One gallery owner said, "It's nostalgic, but nostalgia doesn't sell unless it's ironic." Ruby pushed on. She researched deeper, read about the Harlem Renaissance, listened to Bessie Smith and Duke Ellington on vinyl. She visited the Schomburg Center, poring over photos of the era, Cotton Club reviews, Savoy dancers mid-Lindy Hop. One weekend, she traveled uptown to Harlem. The neighborhood had changed. Gentrified in parts, still vibrant in others. She stood outside the site of the old Savoy ballroom, now apartments, imagining the music spilling into the street. At a small jazz club on 125th, she sat in the back, sipping ginger ale, watching a young saxophonist improvise. It felt like Ilyana's ghost was there. A subplot emerged in Ruby's life. Her roommate, Lena, an aspiring actress, became her biggest supporter, an occasional model. Lena had her own struggles. Auditions that went nowhere, a toxic ex. Their late-night talks deepened their friendship. "You're not just photographing Ilyana," Lena said one night. "You're photographing us, all the women still fighting." Ruby also met Marcus, a barista at her local coffee shop who played upright bass in a weekend band. He was quiet, thoughtful, with a smile that crinkled his eyes. He offered to play during shoots for atmosphere. Their conversations turned flirtatious, then tentative dates, walks in Central Park, sharing headphones on the subway. But doubt crept in. Was she romanticizing the past? Ilyana's diary had darkness, addiction rumors around some musicians, violence from speakeasy owners, the toll of being a black woman in a white-dominated industry. Ruby added layers. One photo series showed a model in a glittering dress, but with bruises faintly visible, symbolizing hidden pain. Months passed. Ruby's portfolio grew, 20 prints, each telling part of Ilyana's story. A speakeasy entrance. A hidden door behind a bookshelf, light spilling out. A singer on stage, spotlit, eyes closed in ecstasy. An alley after hours, cigarette smoke, shadows, longing. She scoured locations, the back room speakeasy, still operating with prohibition vibes, vintage lofts, jazz bars. Friends modeled more, a diverse cast reflecting Harlem's mix, black, latinx, white, honoring the era's boundary-breaking spirit. Setbacks hit hard. One shoot rained out, film got light leaked. Money ran low. She took night shifts at a bar. Marcus encouraged her, "This is bigger than you. It's memory." Then, breakthrough, a small online feature on a photography blog. Views climbed. Comments poured in, "This feels alive." A gallery owner in Chelsea, Elena Vasquez, emailed, intrigued. "Send more." Ruby prepared furiously. She framed prints herself, wrote artist statements tying Ilyana's voice to her own. Meanwhile, Ilyana's diary revealed more, a forbidden romance with Tommy, a white bootlegger, fears of exposure, dreams of recording her own album, never realized. Ruby wove these into images, subtle, symbolic. Chapter 4, The Exhibition, almost equals 2,000 words. The opening night arrived. Elena's gallery in Chelsea glowed with warm lights. Ruby wore a vintage red dress, satin, bias cut, lips painted crimson. The space filled, critics, collectors, friends. Photographs lined the walls, large, evocative. Visitors lingered, whispering. Ruby circulated, nervous but proud. Then she saw her, an elderly woman in a tailored coat, silver hair in a neat bun, eyes sharp. The woman studied each photo intently. She approached. "I'm Margaret Moreau. Ilyana was my grandmother." Ruby froze. Margaret had seen the online buzz, recognized details only family knew, the scar on Ilyana's wrist from a childhood accident, visible in one close-up. They talked for hours. Margaret shared stories. Ilyana's triumphant nights at Smalls, the heartbreak when Tommy disappeared, rumored killed in a mob dispute, her later years raising a family quietly in Brooklyn. She never stopped singing at home, Margaret said. Humming jazz while cooking. The exhibition succeeded, sales, reviews praising the haunting fusion of eras. But the real gift was connection. In the weeks after, Ruby and Margaret met often, tea in Harlem cafes, walks along the Hudson. Margaret loaned family photos, Ruby digitized them, incorporating into new work. Ruby's career shifted, commissions, a book deal for Echoes. Marcus became steady, supportive, loving. Lena landed a role off-Broadway. Ruby reflected often on her lipstick, no longer just armor, but tribute, to Ilyana's courage, to women who persisted. One evening, at a quiet jazz club, Ruby sat with Margaret. A singer performed Summertime. Ruby felt Ilyana there, in the notes, in her own heart. In New York, where dreams are made and broken, Ruby had found her place. Not as the girl who arrived with a camera, but as a storyteller, an artist, a keeper of memories, all marked by the vibrant hue of red.